September 1961. In a quiet library in Washington, D.C., a group of scientists gathered around a map. Their eyes were fixed on the delicate lines drawn on paper that appeared to stretch from the Earth to the Moon. It was at that moment that President John F. Kennedy announced that the United States would land a man on the Moon before the end of the decade. But could this dream really become a reality? Until then, no human had ever ventured beyond Earth's orbit, and the Soviet Union was ahead of America at every step. The first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, 1957. The first living creature, Laika the dog, 1957. The first human, Yuri Gagarin, 1961. All were Russian. America had only one path, the Moon. Following Kennedy's announcement, NASA launched the Apollo program. It was not merely a scientific mission, it was also a weapon in the Cold War. By 1967, a fire during Apollo 1 claimed the lives of 3 astronauts, yet NASA did not lose heart. Then Apollo 8, 1968, took humans into lunar orbit for the first time, and Apollo 10 tested every phase of the landing. Finally, on July 16, 1969, the historic Apollo 11 flight lifted off from Florida's Kennedy Space Center. Millions watched as the towering Saturn V rocket, weighing 3,500 tons and delivering 7.6 million pounds of thrust, soared into the sky and vanished into space. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. These 3 names were forever etched in the annals of history. 4 days later, on July 20th, when an unusual rumble was heard on the Moon's surface, a voice resonated over the radio. "Houston Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed." The entire world watched on television as a human being set foot on the lunar soil. Neil Armstrong then uttered his famous line, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Yet amid the celebration, a question began to emerge in some minds. Was it all real? In 1974, a young author named Bill Kaysing wrote a book titled, "We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion Swindle." Kaysing, who had experience in rocket engineering himself, claimed that NASA had staged the moon landing in collaboration with Stanley Kubrick. His arguments were as follows. Why are there no stars in the photographs? In every image of the moon, the sky is completely black. No stars are visible. Why is the flag waving? There is no wind on the moon, so why does the American flag appear to flutter? Why are the shadows parallel? Shadows falling in different places are parallel even though the sun was shining from the same angle. According to Kaysing, all these flaws were evidence that the photographs were produced in a studio, where artificial lights created the shadows. He also asserted that the technology used in Kubrick's film Oct 2001, A Space Odyssey, 1968, was employed to fabricate the fake Apollo 11 footage. This theory gained ground in the 1980s, when television shows like Capricorn 1, 1977, planted the seed in the public mind that governments were capable of vast deceptions. Radio host Art Bell, and later the rise of YouTube, gave the theory new life. NASA and scientists took these doubts seriously and examined every argument. To explain the absence of stars, they noted that the moon's surface is extremely bright under sunlight. The camera's exposure was set so low that only the brightly lit surface and the astronauts' suits were captured. The light from the stars was too faint to register on the camera. Just as stars are not visible during the day on Earth. Regarding the waving flag, it was explained that the flag was mounted on a horizontal rod to keep it upright. When the astronauts planted it, The rod's flexibility caused the flag to move. Although there is no wind on the moon, any object in motion will continue to vibrate for a while. In the video, the flag only appears to move when the astronauts touch it. To address the issue of shadows and lighting, experts clarified that the moon's surface is not smooth but is riddled with craters and mountains. These irregularities cause the shadows to fall at different angles. Additionally, outshine can alter the effects of lighting. Another important point is that the camera's wide-angle lens can make the shadows appear parallel. Scientists further stressed that with the technology available in 1969, fabricating such fake images was impossible. For example, the moon's gravitational pull is only 1/6 of Earth's. Artificially replicating the astronauts' movements and jumps would have been extremely difficult. In 2017, a YouTuber named Mark Robert tested the Apollo videos using modern software and demonstrated their authenticity. Another objection raised by theorists was, why did the Soviet Union never claim that Apollo 11 was faked? During the Cold War, the head of the Russian space program, Sergei Korolev, had been ahead of America. But his sudden death in 1966 set the program back. By 1969, the fourth test of the Russian N-1 rocket had also failed. The Soviet Union confirmed that Apollo 11 signals were indeed coming from the moon. Russian scientists recorded Apollo 11 signals via the lunar lander mission, Lander 15. Would they have remained silent if it were a hoax? After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, several Russian space officials admitted that they believed in the authenticity of Apollo 11. Yet another accusation from the theorists is that NASA has kept thousands of Apollo mission records classified. In truth, due to budget cuts in the 1970s, NASA failed to adequately preserve some of the Apollo data. For instance, the original high-quality videotapes were either improperly stored or lost. In 2006, NASA admitted that it had lost track of the records for 700 boxes. Later, some of these tapes were discovered in an old warehouse, restored, and released in 2009. Another interesting incident occurred in 2009 when India's space agency, ISRO, using its lunar orbiter Chandrayaan-1, captured high-resolution images of the Apollo 15 landing site. These images clearly showed the equipment left behind by the astronauts and the tracks they had made. Yet theorists claim that NASA must have pressured ISRO. The question then remains, why do people believe such theories? Psychologists call it inner confirmation bias. That is, people tend to believe things that conform to their pre-existing notions. For example, if you already think that governments lie, you will interpret everything through that lens. The mistrust between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War further fueled this mindset. For some, it was easier to believe that America was deceiving the public than to acknowledge an extraordinary scientific achievement. In 2001, a Gallup poll indicated that 6% of Americans still believed the moon landing was a hoax. Hollywood films like Capricorn 1, 1977, and Interstellar, 2014, also planted the seed in the public mind that deception in space missions was possible. On platforms like Reddit and Facebook, users often mix up flat Earth theories with the moon landing hoax. From Apollo 11 through Apollo 17, a total of 382 kilograms of lunar rock were collected. These rocks are completely different from terrestrial rocks. They exhibit unique oxygen isotope ratios, bear the marks of billions of years of meteoric bombardment, and contain evidence of the moon's magnetic history. Scientists from Russia, Japan, and China have analyzed these samples and all have confirmed their authenticity. In 2017, China's Chang'e 4 mission landed on the far side of the moon, and verified the marks left by the Apollo missions. Furthermore, in 2020, NASA applied to have the Apollo landing sites declared historic sites to protect them from damage by future missions. If Apollo 11 had been filmed in a studio, would the 400,000 NASA employees who worked on the mission have remained silent? Would the Soviet Union, which was quick to expose even America's smallest mistakes, have quietly accepted it? Would radio experts around the world who recorded signals coming from the moon all have been deceived? This greatest mission in human history was not a movie. It was a reality that proved that when science, courage, and determination come together, man can make the impossible possible. Yet perhaps there will always be those who continue to question, because as the saying goes, there is no fable more absurd than the truth. Double asterisk.